Now, guys, let's go over and we'll get into the next topic. But I do think it's interesting as we see everything develop in the NBA, especially with how I guess you would put it in the way that I want to characterize this is the way that we are viewing the how this draft is being viewed. Basically, we know that the draft is kind of being treated as one of the weaker ones, which I think it might be weaker at the top, but I think talent wise it might have some of the most talent we've seen in a while. And for me, I think that's something that people aren't realizing, that I think outside the top two picks, like I do think there's actual talent here for people to be interested in. So for people who are saying that this isn't a legit draft, I think that's a wrong and like a short-sighted view. So I want to hear. So let's continue. What do you guys think? I definitely think it's interesting, as this is a interesting draft. Now, the other thing we're hearing right here is the Atlanta Hawks. The Atlanta Hawks allegedly are a team that could potentially be moving down. I personally think they're not going to move down in the draft. I don't see a reason why, but the report that is coming out is that league sources say the Atlanta Hawks have had discussions with teams about moving down from the first pick. The Hawks reportedly haven't even worked out all their candidates for the number one pick yet either, so they're just exploring their options. If the Hawks trade down, it could be for Donovan Clingan. Donovan Clingan impressed the team in a private workout. The other thought is, okay, you trade Clint Capella and you trade DeAndre Hunter, and then you'll have a center by rotation of Onyeka Okongwu and Donovan Clingan, with your power forward being Jalen Johnson. You have DeJounte, Trae Young, six-man Bogdan. You still have on the roster, I think AJ Griffin would be involved in any trade, let's be honest, if they were to trade. But if you're the Hawks, who else could you want to trade if you were to trade Hunter and Capella? I mean, you might bring back Bay, but he's going to be out for most of the year with an injury. Again, like I said, Griffin is probably on the move. You have Kobe Buffkin, who they believe in, so you wouldn't be going after another guard. So what is a team that might have, multiple picks in this year's upcoming NBA draft, I think could help you go ahead and look for somebody. So the Hawks really like Donovan Clingan, and according to Matt Nolander of CBS Sports, they heard that Dan Hurley recently in an interview, mostly about his decision not to take the job, he dropped some intel saying that Quinn Snyder was someone he talked to, that Quinn Snyder's a really smart guy and he really likes Donovan Clingan. And like I said, similar to like a Derek Lively, Daniel Gafford rotation, they could do that with Onyeka and Mr. Donovan Clingan. Donovan doesn't really play more than 24 minutes a night so far in his career. And then you have Jalen at the 4. You have DeJounte and Trae. You're going to probably keep, like I said, Bogdan as the 6th man. And if you look for a team that might have multiple picks in this year's draft, because you would think, okay, Kobe Buffkin, Bruno Fernando, Garrison Matthews, and Muhammad Gee, this one's Gee, I think, not the one who's pronounced gay, are all there. So you still need to figure out some free agents. But if you could turn this number one pick maybe into 2 picks, one in the future and one this draft, or 2 picks in this draft, for example, if a team like San Antonio was like, here, we'll give you 4 and 8 for one, maybe even throw in a contract that they could have an interest in, and they take on a contract like a DeAndre Hunter. Like, let's say you trade the number one pick in DeAndre Hunter to the Spurs for 3 and 8, and you take Donovan Clingan with 3, and then at 8 you take either a Ron Holland, a Cody Williams, a Buzelis. I really think Ron Holland or a Dalton Connect would help this team there. So there you get yourself 2 players. You move off of DeAndre Hunter's contract, which is like $20 million a year. Not just that, but you maybe even take on like a Devontae Graham, who's a partially guaranteed of 2.8. So you really would just be able to cut Devontae Graham, and then you're saving all that money. Or you trade for a Zach Collins, or you trade for, I really think it makes sense to go for a Devontae Graham, and then you get to save the salary right there, and then the Spurs get themselves, the number one pick, so they can get themselves either Rissachet or Zachary Rissachet, or Zachary Rissachet, or Alex Sarr with the number one pick. Either of those guys fit really nicely next to Victor Wembanyama and what they're doing, and they get themselves a guy like a DeAndre Hunter, yeah, he's making, he's on a more expensive contract, but it's really not that bad of a deal in my opinion. Ooh, so let me hear you guys' thoughts on that one. I don't think that's like necessarily that bad of a deal. But what do you guys say if you guys are fans of the Spurs right there? Would you trade for the number one pick in this year's draft? I mean, if that's all you have to give up, guys, that's not that bad of a deal. I feel like that's kind of a bargain. But what would you guys do and why? I definitely think it's an interesting draft to say the least, with how everything's going to play out and how it seemingly is playing out. I'm curious. I'm curious to hear your guys' opinions. I'm curious to see what actually happens. I'll be at the NBA draft this year, so that'll be the exciting part. Now let's